If there is a message for us today, I believe it is to learn to live from our heart in love. These short lessons, hopefully, will help to inspire you to live with purpose, love passionately, and inspire others. We are the change agent our world needs. I'm Helen Toews. Step into the river today with me to explore the mysteries of God. They are not hidden from us, but for us to discover. All right. So first of all, I just want to welcome everybody, and yeah, here we are. And we were just sharing a little bit about how great Kim's message was last week on Elohim. And so if you haven't been able to listen, really encourage you to take a look. It's up on the River 474, and as are most of our sessions, I think we're almost getting caught up. There's a couple of what do you call it, meditations that need to be isolated and put up, but it's getting there. Everybody just seems to be a lot on everybody's plate, isn't there? All right, so let's just settle our hearts. We've got quite a bit to cover tonight, as well as I want to take us actually into the river tonight. Tonight, I'm going to pull up the share the screen, and I'm going to pull up, because we're going to talk about, where did it go? There we are. Just when I thought I was getting really good at this. I've actually had a number of people ask about frequency and some of the, our brain waves and things like this. So this meeting, we're going to take a look at this, but I'm not going to go super in depth with it. I'm going to give you an overview. I am not a scientist. I have studied it, and I'll share what I know in its simplest forms. But the purpose of this one is to give us an overview on frequency and brain waves, not to make us scientists, or not that you have to remember everything, but to help us to realize the technology that's in us is brilliant. It's absolutely brilliant. And so I'm hoping by the end of this little teaching that we have a stronger understanding of how our brain works and how frequency works and how it relates to practically to what we're doing, as in meditations and in ascensions. So let's just take a deep breath, and we'll just give this to the Lord, and I know that He'll unpack it for all of us as we go through it. Father, we would just want to say thank you tonight for all that you are doing in our lives. Lord, for bringing us together, and Lord, how you're putting all of these pieces together, and you're building us line upon line, precept upon precept. So tonight, Lord, we just roll the care of this teaching to you. Lord, I ask that you give us ears to hear, eyes to see, and Lord, you speak specifically to each one of us in whatever area is important. Lord, we thank you, we bless you, and we are so grateful for this moment, this time, because you are in every second. All right, whoops, here we go. All right. So the first thing I'm going to say is just the technicality. Frequency is the number of waves that pass a given point in 1 second, and that is the definition of Hertz. We're going to keep it super simple. We are energy, and we are a frequency. So different patterns of brain waves can be recognized and measured by their amplitudes and frequencies. These are detectable processes that in the brain that produce our experience of being, thinking, and perceiving. Slow activity refers to a lower frequency. High amplitude is the distance between the two peaks of a wave, like a drum beat, boom, 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 boom. And fast activity refers to a higher frequency, like a high-pitched flute. And we can all hear that in our heads, I'm sure. So we're just going to look at each one of these briefly. So here you see a delta wave, and in a delta wave, there's less than 4 hertz, and they occur in deep sleep. It's the dominant rhythm in infants up to the age of 1 year, and it's present in stages 3 and 4 of sleep. We increase delta waves in order to decrease our awareness of the physical world. That's what we do when we do heart-brain coherence, right? We're breathing, we're rhythmically breathing. We set our minds and our hearts to compassion. And what happens is our awareness of the physical world comes down, our focus is on our heart, and our brainwave comes down to that delta state, that 0.1. We also access information in our unconscious mind through delta, and you might recognize this during a meditation or an ascension time. The next one is the theta. Theta activity has a frequency of 4 to 7 hertz, and it's seen in connection with creativity, intuition, daydreaming and fantasizing, internal focus, meditation, prayer, and spiritual awareness. It is abnormal in awake adults, but it's perfectly normal in children, particularly up to the age of 7. And I've also read up to the age of 13. So this is an important thing that I'd like us to be aware of. It's also normal during sleep and in meditation, and it promotes adaptive, complex behaviors such as learning and memory. So it's an important frequency. We've looked at this saying before where it says, give me a child until he's 7 and I'll show you the man. It's actually Adolf Hitler said that about his young army, because he knew if he could get the children and if he could program the children to evil, that they would grow up into that man. And if you're a parent here and you have children, like up to the age of 7 in particular, these children are mainly, if it's not interrupted, if we don't try to get them out of their creativity or out of their intuition or their daydreaming or fantasizing, these children are in this theta state. And it is an amazing state for them because they are so creative and so intuitive. I'll give you an example. Lots of times a child will have a best friend or an imaginary friend. Well, that imaginary friend sometimes doesn't make sense to adults. So they try and pull the child out of that imagination instead of helping the child to realize that we do live in a spiritual realm as well as a physical. So I want to encourage you to, to work with these children in that state. Now, the next one is alpha waves, and alpha waves peak around 10 hertz. Okay. Good, healthy alpha production promotes mental resourcefulness and overall sense of relaxation. Alpha help you to feel at ease and calm, and it's the major rhythm that's seen in normal, relaxed adults. Alpha is one of the brain's most important frequencies to learn and use information taught in classrooms and on the job. Scientists claim that the healthiest state of mind is the one experienced in the alpha stage. The way we start our day will set the tone for the rest of the day. The power lies within us in our thinking pattern to maintain the alpha brainwaves. Consider starting the day with positive affirmations, meditations, thoughts, and intentions, or relaxing activities. The next one is a beta, and it's known as a fast activity. It has a frequency of about 14 to 16 hertz and greater. It's generally regarded as a normal rhythm and is the dominant rhythm in those who are alert or anxious. It is the state that most of brain is in when we have our eyes open and we're listening and thinking during analytical problem solving, judgment, decision making, and processing information about the world around us. The beta band has a relatively large range and has been divided into low, mid-range, and high. We're not going into that. Sufficient for where we're going tonight is to understand the level of the beta. And then there's the gamma frequency. Gamma's associated state is heightened perception, learning, and problem-solving tasks. Gamma brain waves are equated with high-level mental states where information from different parts of the brain can be processed simultaneously. Between gamma and lambda brainwave states, there is a higher gamma state called hypergamma. Hypergamma exists within the highest range of gamma around the, I can't see, 100 hertz range. Okay. Now I've just introduced you to another you may not have heard of yet. So tonight I'm going to introduce you to lambda and epsilon. Lambda and epsilon are two extraordinary types of brain waves. Lambda waves have frequency or speed of 200 hertz and more. So this is as high as been recorded. Epsilon waves are the exact opposite, and their frequency is everything below 0.5 hertz. So here we see the scales. We can see, okay, I'm trying to move something here. We can see now I've introduced the epsilon on the bottom and the lambda on top, and then the others. So now instead of 5, we have 7. And if you look at the pictures along the side, but look at the rate of the lambda hertz, how fast moving it is. If you look at the gamma rays, and it's a little bit more irregular, but pretty fast. The lambda is super fast and super regulated. The epsilon, if you notice the curve, it's the diametrically opposite of that lambda scale, but when you put them together, they then one actually is entwined with the other. The lambda brainwave frequency of 200 hertz are one of the lesser known frequencies and one of the last to be discovered. It's difficult to measure, and they are very fast frequency of brainwave that is in the hyper gamma spectrum. The benefits of the lambda state seem to be very mysterious and almost secretive. It's tied to the Tibetan meditation traditions. It's becoming a technique of breath work that many are exploring. And sometimes lambda is associated with what we would understand as our aha moment. And I think we've all had those aha moments when you have that realization of something, that moment of discovery where it's more of a spiritual understanding that we sense and feel, but we don't quite have language to it. It's the best that I can describe it. The lambda is therefore associated with a much higher level of consciousness beyond simply deep meditation or spiritual consciousness. It's more of a state of complete oneness and wholeness. So we know where we're going. You might imagine a brainwave state as fast as lambda would be very intense and kind of hyper, but it isn't at all. In fact, the effects of the lambda feel more like a slow, deep epsilon wave. The epsilon waves are very low frequency, below that of delta waves, and they start at 0.5. Most electrocephalograms, EEG devices are not able to measure below 0.5. So the slow epsilon wave is seen embedded within the lambda wave when measured. there seems to be a circular pattern that occurs between the very high end of the brainwave spectrum and the very low of the brainwave spectrum. Although these brainwave states oscillate at vastly different speeds, experiences within them are found to have exactly the same conscious states. Now, I find that super interesting. The fact that, that a brainwave state that is really, really high, like 200 Hertz, is equal to and has the same conscious level as 0.05. Many different groups of independent EEG researchers have found that these states to be the same, suggesting a circular link between these two extremes of brainwave activity. Can we achieve lambda or epsilon brainwave states? Yes. In meditation, in order to achieve certain brainwave states, a consistent daily meditation practice is important. That is how we familiarize ourselves with the various states of consciousness and self-awareness. It's important because we learn to release our consciousness, our conscious awareness of our being into the place that is in Christ consciousness. Now, I'm bringing up this subject here that I've written out. It's called brain entrainment. If any of you start, take this lesson further, because this isn't something we're going to develop. This is just something I'm sharing for this one lesson. You may come across the term brain entrainment, and it refers to the hypothesized capacity of the brain to naturally synchronize its brainwave frequency with the rhythm of periodic external stimuli, most commonly auditory, visual, or tactile. In essence, it's sounds that people use on audio tracks, and it's recommended that you try these entrainment tracks on gamma and delta frequency first. And they suggest achieving high hyper, gamma, and lambda and epsilon states that lead to very powerful states of consciousness. And however, this is the alert. They may incur headaches, so be cautious when experimenting. Why did I bring this up? Well, I have tried this method. I have had experience in this as I have studied over the years. It is one of the things that I looked into, and my personal choice at the moment is not to use any external elements that I'm not at peace with. We can attain these levels of consciousness without, can we attain these levels of consciousness without aids? My answer is absolutely. Because remember, you are the technology. Can humans control their brainwave frequencies? Well, the cycle of brainwave frequencies occur when we're in different states of consciousness. So the cycle of waves gradually increases from the moment we wake up and goes through the various patterns until we fall asleep. Selecting the activities that stimulate our brain and trigger the brainwave frequencies is something that we have complete control of as we make conscious and intentional decisions. The answer is yes, we can control our brainwave frequencies. We can control what we're thinking. We have that technology. You may have heard of a man known as Iceman, who is able to control his core body temperature and withstand freezing temperatures. It is thought that he is able to tap into the lambda waves of brain state for a prolonged period of time. His name is Wim Hof, the Iceman. And like the Himalayan Tibetan monks, he's able to meditate at extremely low temperatures. So, okay, I'm going to go back to him. There are breath works that teach the Wim Hof method, if you're interested in looking at it. I have explored that as well. They are very intense. It's a very intense methodology, and I think it's worth looking into if you're interested. To get to the level where you're sitting on an ice floe and melting the ice yourself and not feeling it, I think would take a lot of work. The intensity is not just in the breathing, but the ability to be able to hold your breath for minutes at a time. So it's quite an interesting breath work. So what I want, I've told you all that. I've tried to explain it as simply as I can, because it's really important that we understand to a point. We don't have to be the scientists that are figuring out every minute of what's happening in our brains. But as we, and I think all of us here on this, at this meeting, all of us are in probably an ascension group or spend time in meditation, either in groups or by yourself. And I wanted us to have just sort of a baseline understanding that our brain waves actually change in these times and that we cause the change in it. And if we can learn that our brain waves are changing and recognize states that we're in, it will help us overall as we mature in the power of ascension and meditation. So let's just pretend, okay, that we are all going into an ascension together or a meditation together. Actually, tonight we're going to go into a guided ascension meditation. We're going to put it all together. And so I want you to think, okay, so where do we start? We've got a few people, we've gathered together, we're going to go into an ascension together. Well, our brain waves at that time are likely in the beta range. We're alert. We have a level of concentration, of cognition, and that's our beta level that our brain waves are in. Now, as we start our meditation or our ascension, then what we do is we begin to relax, right? And then we begin a visualization process. And that relaxation and visualization goes into an internal creativity. Our imagination starts being activated as well. When that happens, we're in that beautiful alpha stage in our brain. The next, and then when we're in the other, the next stages in the meditation, where we become aware of our inner self, we become a little bit more detached, as it were, and we're visualizing. And in that state, we go into more of the theta and the delta area in our brain. So you can see we go from a higher brain function to a lower one at that time. Now, I'm sure as we do that, you probably can sense when your brain is slowing down like that, when your brain is calming down, and then you just sort of what we call go with the flow. And one of the reasons that I wanted to, whoops, I'm going to go back up first. One of the reasons I wanted to bring that up is because sometimes when we are in a group ascension time or a focus, sometimes we get distracted. And so I have been in some ascension times where people have taken out their phone and have started Googling something that's been said, and they will bring that up in the time. Well, here's what happens when you do that. You've gone from a detached awareness, you've gone from a peaceful meditation process with visualization and creativity back up to an alertness and into a concentration, a cognitive state, because you've left that peaceful part and your brain now has gone into action again. What happens when we do that? We go from that beautiful place where Father has us, where we're being guided spiritually. We're doing an inner work to coming back to an awareness of our bodies and our being again. So you can see that it's important to realize that technically, that there's a measurable effect of when we spend that time in ascension or meditation, and we come into that beautiful place of the theta, even the delta level, like we do with heart-brain coherence, that healing comes and awareness comes. And if we keep going back and forth, we don't sometimes stay in the state of readiness and peace for the work to be done in us that we can't do ourselves consciously. So I'm hoping that'll make a little bit of sense. When we and I felt that when I saw the epsilon and the lambda brain waves that come together, I realized that when we're in the focus of remember we did this the energy centers where and you can go and do that as often as you want. Is it just blessing the energy center, and we take the energy centers one at a time, and we isolate the area by our intent to be able to bless it. But one of the things in isolation, we say focus on the space, not on the energy center itself. We do that first, but then after you go focus on the space. Where that space, there's no one, nothing, nowhere, and you find yourself in a place called everywhere. You find yourself in the sometimes it's called the field, the quantum hologram, divine matrix, space, and you know what I'm calling it? You find yourself in the mind of God. And I believe that lambda epsilon space is very much the mind of God. It is that fantastic release of energy with perfect peace. It all comes together. So what's the big deal about frequency? Frequency carries information. Try to keep that in mind when you think about frequency. Every one of the brain waves carry information, whether we're aware of it or not. Just like when you're in the lowest state, the information that's carried through you is peaceful and it's healing, and and your imagination is there, and there's a go with the flow. It's a fabulous place. So every place that information floods through you as well. We're learning the importance of a small thing like heart-brain coherence. You're going to hear me say it over and over. I know I said it 100 times already, but that 0.1 frequency is really important because it causes the technology in our body to become alive and change us for the better in whatever needs to be changed. I was thinking about this as an example of people who operate just sort of under the radar. A number of years ago, I was at a meeting. It was a meeting actually for a dental association, and the speaker was there talking to dentists because dentists have a big staff at times, and he was talking about, what works and what doesn't work. And he started telling us a story about highly discriminating people. And highly discriminating people are defined not by intelligence. Highly discriminating people are not about education. It's not about culture. They're not defined by their faith. But a highly discriminating person cannot stand small talk. They're not interested in talking about people, places, or things. They want to engage in thoughts, feelings, and idea. Highly discriminating people cannot work at a low discriminating workplace or with a person that's not highly discriminating themselves. And that's why some businesses have office high turnovers without knowing what the reason is. There doesn't seem to be any logical reason, but people just aren't gelling. You might find yourself in here. You might say, wow, that sounds like me, or this is a situation that we have in our our workplace, or I'm hoping that it'll help you understand that we are made differently, and some people just work at a level that other people don't. Here's what they found out. They took 200 people and they brought them together for cocktails. And in that 200 people, they profiled 10 of those people as highly discriminating. So 10 out of 200 people in a room like this was their experiment. And by the way, they did it a number of times. What happened was that by the end of the evening, those 10 highly discriminating people found each other. And nobody can tell you why, but it's something from the internal frequency that they have. I've told you what they, what their profile is. I think it's very, very interesting. But they didn't even know that they had this label on them. They just operated at a frequency from within themselves at a different place than most of society. So I just throwing that in because really it is relevant to our everyday life and help us to accept each other as well. Our energy fields are carriers of information. It knows no limits, and it's called frequency. So we are like radio signals. We're always sending out information. It's always there, just like the highly discriminating people, but we don't relate until we hear it, until we tune into the frequency. It's like that radio signal, you hear the static until you get it right on the channel. That's what happens with highly discriminating people. They everything's static in the room until they tune in to the people that they can relate with. It's about frequency. It's about tuning in. Just like that lady here. I actually remember having a radio like this, so that tells you my age. I actually remember the General Electric ad for this one for GE, because we thought that was portable. We just thought we'd died and gone to heaven. Really, you could take your radio with you. Wow. And now, of course, everything, your life is on that little 2-inch by 4-inch movie screen that you talk to people on. We've got a frequency happening right now. It's called 5G, and it's the 5th generation technology standard for broadband cellular networks. 5G networks are predicted to have more than 1.7 billion subscribers worldwide by 2025, according to GSM Association. That tells us that there's frequencies going out over us and into us that we need to know how to stand strong in the frequency that we are called to live in, which is our human being made in the image of God. Skylink, we're very happy for Skylink because we can have our Zoom from the middle of the woods now. However, frequencies are creating smart cities. And there's one near you. I'm serious. In Sweden and in China, you don't need a phone. You just need a chip. And I know that you probably all know that, but I'm gonna go there. In China, they're at the level right now of putting this technology into people to the point where they're not needing to have their cell phones anymore, because there's enough radio towers that are connecting with the people that that person can go out on the sidewalk and just say to himself, Uber, and within a few minutes, an Uber will show up in front of him. Things are changing really, really quickly. Brain chips, now they can be used for good. Can you imagine being paralyzed and somebody telling you that if we put a chip into your brain, you're going to be able to deal with, use your technology around you. You can run your computer. That's technology for good. But it's not so good when that mind control chip is run by associations that want to take your freedoms. And that's what's happened with the CIA mind control rays. And I won't go into that. You can, what my point is this technology can be used for good. It can be used for evil. Super soldiers. It can actually.
Right now, but when I was in the shower, no, sorry, when I was in the shower, my phone went off. I'm very, very sorry. It was an alarm on my phone.
I'm going to just try and. Okay, super soldiers. Super soldiers are not a just out of a Marvel comic book. It is actually part of what's happening right now in our society, and we're being chipped. So why are we studying on brain waves and frequencies? Because we are made in the likeness and image of Yahweh. We have been given the authority to rule and reign, and not by external gadgets. What we have been created with, all the super powers that we see in movies. If we can understand that we will pay more attention to the importance of our internal technology, our own frequencies, what our energy does, what the frequency does, and recognize we are sovereign beings. We are made as God, and we are given all authority. Jesus said, and I know I've said this a number of times, go and do what I did. And he did it all. He walked through walls. He fed thousands. He cleansed the lepers. He raised the dead. He walked through walls. There was nothing that he couldn't do. And he said, you can do it. You are my superheroes. Even the CIA knows that it's true. That and they have a remote viewing. This means that they train people to be psychically aware and can literally go into the enemy's camp and report on things that are going. We are that technology. We don't need to learn it in a CIA program. We are it. We need to accept the fact that we are amazing. We are unlimited, and everything that you see in the Marvel comics superheroes, you are that person. You are it. The better we understand how we are made and why we've been made, the stronger we will be individually and together. The times that we're in right now are critical. We are having to choose if we will give up our sovereignties for lesser power. Matthew 24:24 says, there shall arise false Christs, and false prophets shall show great signs and wonders, insomuch that, if it were possible, they will deceive the very elect. And I know the very elect need to know that we are the technology. We create by our thoughts. I know that we have already studied. This is Dr. Emoto's pictures where he takes the energy of thoughts and words, and that go into water crystals, and the water crystals are frozen, and he takes pictures and he shows the result of these. These are created. This shows the material creation that is done by our very own thoughts, our very own words. We create our lives that way. We create our lives by our thoughts. The things around you are not there by accident. Your thoughts mirror our reality. The more we learn and activate our inner selves and how powerful we are, the better we will resist artificial external technology. Reason number one for being aware of what you think about and how your brains work, so that we understand that our thoughts are our intention, and our intention creates our reality. Basically, Our thoughts create our reality. That's it. That's all. As a man thinks in his heart, so is he. So when you say something is because you have, when you say something, it is because you have thought it first, whether you realize it or not. Everything comes from our thoughts. And the only way to change is from the inside out. And that's why understanding is so great. When you have understanding something, you have more confidence to activate it from your thoughts and intentions. And we're seeing that. Meditation and ascension is key. The more we practice, the more aware we become of the power that's within us. When we meditate, we go into an unlimited place within us where all things are possible. This is the place that affects change both physically, emotionally, and spiritually, and no external force has the power that can do that. So tonight, I'm going to ask you, if you would like to come with me, I'd like to take you on a simple path to Father's house. Tonight, I'd like to, like I said before, I'm going to put together a time where we can do meditation and ascension. It's a mixture of the two. And if you'd like to do this, I'm going to share as we go into the places that we'll journey into, but it's up to you to look around when we go in there and let your imagination show you the things that are there, and you'll understand when we start. This particular activation is based on the very first teaching that Ed and I learned about living from the inside out. I called it stepping in, stepping out, and Ian Clayton taught it in 2012 at a conference in Coeur d'Alene, Idaho. That's just a short 10 years ago. And I felt to do it with you tonight because when I first shared it with our group years ago, there was an amazing testimony that I'll share with you when we come back. So if I'm just going to get, that'd be great. Thank you. All right, I'm just going to put some music on in the background. If you get comfortable, then I'm going to guide you into what I'm calling into the river. Excuse me. All right. Everybody just take a deep breath. I know there's a lot of information there. Okay. Okay, so tonight I'm going to take you on a guided trip into the river. Psalm 46 says, there is a river, its streams delight the city of God, the dwelling place of the Most High. God is within her, and she will not be toppled. God will help her when the morning comes. We're going to step into that river tonight. And even though this is a guided meditation, it's within you to determine where your thoughts take you. When we come to a place, I encourage you to join in that place that we are. At times, we're going to just let the silence speak. At that time, when it's silent, just you look, you see and feel what the Lord would show you. We'll be together, but each of us will have a time to reflect and listen at each place. You may be surprised by joy at what you encounter. So let's take a deep breath. Inhale deeply. Exhale when you're ready. Let's do it 2 or 3 times. Inhale. If you have any resistance, Any thoughts that take you from this moment, just recognize them and breathe them out with purpose. Focus only on your breath. Just breathe. Now join me as we go to the edge of the river. It's a beautiful place with much soft grass along the side. There's a gradual slope going into the water. The water is beautifully clear. You can see colored stones on the bottom. They're rounded, and when you step in the water, you can feel the stones. They're soft and gentle to the touch. The water is very shallow, but inviting. We can walk along the edge in the river for a while. The water coming up to your ankles. You may feel like you'd like to go in further and sit in the water. You look at the stones and they are radiant and soft feeling. It's very peaceful, and you can lay down to rest in this place very safely. The water flows like silk over you. And you find yourself floating upstream. You're floating and there's no effort. As you're carried upstream, you hear a waterfall. At first, it's very faint, but as you get closer, you can see it. It's a bit larger than you thought. There's reflections in the waterfall, rainbows. The waterfall is beautiful. As we stand by it, we can hear the sound of many waters speaking. You can feel the mist on your face. It's warm and refreshing. If you look to the side, the waterfall has a path. We can climb up to the top of the waterfall. There's a place to sit there, but for some, it's a place to explore. I love this place, and I want to jump off the top into the pool at the bottom. As I jump, I realize I'm not falling, but I'm floating down. I put my arms out and it feels like flying. I come to the bottom and I go deep into the pool. It's very deep, it's dark. The water feels lovely and I realize I can breathe in the water. It feels amazing. I walk back to the top along the path. I see that the path goes farther along the river. The river's flowing gently. And again, I can see the stones on the bottom that now appear like reflecting gems. They're very large and the water is inviting. I look ahead and there's a bridge. The bridge looks ancient. There's a figure on the bridge. I feel like I know that person. I begin to run to the bridge, and the grass under my feet is a soft carpet. And I realize somewhere I lost my shoes. The figure becomes clearer. It's Jesus, my Yeshua. I feel so excited. His arms are outstretched, and I literally jump into the most amazing hug. It feels like perfect rest. We talk, but there are no words spoken. We walk together to a bench under the most beautiful of trees. It's a silver tree. It has golden apples on it. I've never seen that before. We spend our time there just being still and knowing. He asks if I would like to go to Father's house. I don't want to leave, but I nod yes. As his hand points down the path, I can see in the distance now a very large house. Words can't explain how amazing it is. It seems very distant. But as I focus on it, it becomes clearer, as though it is moving to me as I move to it. I see the form of a person in the doorway waving. Yahweh, Father. As I come closer, the love from his heart to mine is tangible. It takes over my entire being. There's a porch. Can we sit together, I ask? We begin to talk together. Again, the knowing is stronger than the words. I can feel his arm covering my shoulders. I'm very safe. I seem to have dozed off, and when I look up, I see his amazing smile. He said very clearly, "You can come here anytime." I was so peaceful, but I knew it was time to go. "Thank you," I said as he hugged me. Now I looked down the path and I saw the bridge. This time Jesus' form was clear and he was waving. I ran to him again. I tried to share everything, but he just looked at me and smiled. He knew before I could speak. As I left the bridge, I turned and said, "I'll be back soon." I saw Father Toews still at the door with a wave. I waved back. Then I ran down the path. Now I could see flowers and trees that I hadn't seen on my way up. They were in colors that I couldn't describe, and I came to the top of the waterfall. Well, I simply ran and dove in one motion, and then I floated and flew down into the pool. As I climbed out, I looked ahead and I saw the river. The river had a path beside it. I ran down the path, but before I did, I picked up a stone from the river. It became a gem, and I put it in my pocket. I came to a place by the river, and now I laughed. There were my shoes. I put them on, and I stepped backwards into the place where I'd come from. Then turning into that place where I had begun this journey. Okay. When you're ready, you can see you have your shoes back on. Okay. I know some of you on tonight, it's years ago now that we did this particular activation together, but I'm going to turn off the music here. This is sort of a timeless activation. I know that as you're coming back, I hope you can hear me, and I hope you're okay. This activation, one of the reasons that I would recommend that this type of activation is really an amazing one to do on your own or do in a group. And when we started learning to ascend together, we started with this activation in our group because, first of all, when it's guided, it's a little easier sometimes when there's a voice and a directive. But what happens is, and I don't know if it happened to you tonight, is that you go off on your own. What happened, I'm going to give you, it's actually an amazing testimony of the first time we used this. In our group, and we were all really, really new. It was 10 years ago now, or well, not quite 10, but maybe 8 years ago that we did this together. And so everybody was in different places and they just didn't quite get what we're talking about, ascending or going into the spirit. It's like stepping beyond the veil, stepping out again. In our meeting room, in our living room, we put up a curtain. We have French doors that come into the living room, and there's about 20 of us. And to get into the living room, you had to walk through the veil because we put a curtain up. So you had to, you had this physical sensation of stepping into another place. And I know it was just a sort of a kindergarten thing to do, but it was really, really fun. And we had that veil for years, actually, for years. And it was fun. And then we learned that we don't have to step in and step out. That veil is torn. We can just be there. We can just step in and we're there. So what happened when we did this, and I just, you know, the words tonight were similar, but different. And one of the gals in the group, she had a hard time with it and she couldn't stay together and sort of follow the storyline as I was sharing it. And I said, well, what did you do? And she said, well, what I did was I went up the path with you and I didn't go in over to the bridge or see Jesus. I just went into this field and I went into this beautiful field of yellow flowers. And I was a little girl and I could just run and be free in this field. And I was running and I had a beautiful yellow dress on and it was amazing. And she shared this, how she went off. And I went, well, there's nothing wrong with that. That's exactly why we have activations like this, so that we can step into that place in the spirit, we called it, right? And then the Lord just directed you. That's perfect. And anyway, we were awkwardly going through this and sharing testimonies. But let me tell you what happened from this, doing this activation together. She came back the next week and she said, I have a testimony from last week. And we at that time, we were also studying on the seven spirits of God and angels and, you know, the angelic, all that kind of thing. And she said, I was when I was a little girl, I could only play in the basement. My mother didn't want me to play in the house because I would make too much of a mess. But I had a friend in the basement and I talked to him and he was my best friend. And now I'm drawing a blank on the name because it's really important that I know the name.
Gavin.
Pardon me? Gowan. That's right.
Gowan. Okay.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Thank you. There's people in the start with me. So Gowan, she said, and I talk to Gowan all the time. And she said, but I realized when I came home from last week and I had gone off into the field of yellow flowers and I was a little girl in the yellow dress. And she said, I don't know what happened, but I started to look up ask the Lord why that happened. And she said, I looked up Gowan's name. And in the book that she looked it up, it meant field of yellow flowers. And when she put it all together, that the Lord had freed her as a little girl, showed her in the first time she ever stepped into an activation and set her completely free from the abuse as a child, because she could only play in a basement. She had this wonderful, beautiful angel that was watching over her, and it all came in and it was real because she had stepped in and just followed the Lord. Isn't that incredible? So this type of activation, I love this because it does a few things. All of our meditations actually essentially does the same thing, but this activation, when we learned it, we realized, because we learned this too, we learned about how our heart and our brains worked, and how if you are going to change something in your brain, you have to do it repeatedly, because it's called neuro pathways that are reconnected when you do something repeatedly. So when you go into a meditation, like when you're blessing the energy centers, or you're doing a guided meditation, or you're doing this kind of meditation where you go into the river, if you noticed, we stepped into the river, followed a path, and then we took that same path back again. It came back to the place where we started. So when you do that kind of thing repeatedly, although you're doing it in the spirit, you're doing it by your consciousness and by your thought, you are actually creating pathways in your brain that create the reality of what it is that you're doing. It becomes real. It becomes more real. And it shows you the power of thought. It shows you how, and thought becomes your reality, right? Becomes your truth. So tonight, I hope you have a takeaway from this, realizing that there is a huge correlation between how we are made, our brain waves, the frequencies that we live in and walk in, and what we can do actually to build those pathways in us. And these pathways, when they're based on an intimate relationship with the Lord, they become your reality, because that changes in your mind. You have a neuron pathway in your mind that changes, and he is part of that pathway. I mean, he's in everything. I hope you're getting it. I'm just going to open this up for where have you landed? I'll stop talking. Here we go. Or we'll be just quiet.
I really enjoyed it, Helen.
Yeah.
I appreciated your teaching about the frequencies. I'd listened to a teaching this week. Mike Parsons had been talking about it, so I was particularly interested in what you had to share and just breaking it down a little bit more, because he just took a few minutes. He'd referred to, I hope I'm quoting him right, he had said he thought we could actually experience each of those frequencies at the same time. Now, perhaps I misunderstood, because he talked about being multidimensional beings. I've always understood, like, the brain just gives off one wave at a time. Does that make any sense, what he was saying? Or maybe I misunderstood about experiencing, those different frequencies or dimensions at the same time.
Yeah. Well, it's funny. I've been thinking about connecting with Mike on some things. My answer is I don't know. First of all, I don't know. From what I've learned from, like, just take tonight, there are certain wavelengths that, like the alpha, where it connects all of them. So in essence, that's a connectivity, right, of all of them. When I learned about the lambda and the epsilon, which are the highest and lowest, is not generally on that graph of 5, and I realized the intensity of that, and really what that what those do when we are able to release ourselves into that level of frequency, then it seems like something takes over. Clearly, if you can come into a meditative state where you suspend your being, and we are dimensional beings, and we are energy, that there is a place for what Mike said, that it is all connected. I would have to listen to what he said to have any more of an opinion than that. So for me, there's certainly more and better and smarter to put it all together. What I wanted to do is just break it down enough to be super simple in each of it, and to recognize the fact that we are in different places. Like when I imagine if you were in this, into the river meditation that we just did, or activation that we just did, and somebody interrupted you when we got to the bridge and said, oh, I just Googled bridges. And do you know what bridges mean? We come right out of that place of where we were just in with him to Google. I mean, really? So to me, it's important that we realize that we do have a responsibility to engage with how we are created. But, Mike, we are unlimited. So I agree with you. Like, we are totally somewhere in the middle of that's a perfect answer, I'm sure.
Thank you. That's helpful.
Okay. Yolanda, and then Em.
Okay, Helen, I have a question. That was awesome. Thank you. My question is, when we've been ascending, I quite often actually physically feel what we're seeing or sensing or hearing. Now, which wave would that fall into? Because then you're physically in there, you're going through all of these dimensions, because you actually see yourself just whizzing through all these portals. So you're going through all of these dimensions and you end up in a particular one.
Yeah.
Most of the time, I don't know which one I've landed in.
Yeah.
But my body, I can feel it. I mean, I get hot, I start shaking or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
So which frequency would that be?
Well, I would say it doesn't matter. It just is. It just is. The frequency is what's carrying the information to you at the time. That's the frequency you're in. And that's where we don't want to say, well, I'm in a delta, beta, alpha, theta. That doesn't have a bearing. The bearing is they exist. But when you're in that place of ascension, and then you're just abandoned to him, you are now dimensionally, maybe that's what Mike's talking about, then you just become dimensionally one with that dimension. And I don't know how to analyze that to bring it into some kind of graph. I just think just go with it. It's fabulous. And you're probably feeling very peaceful, aren't you? It's kind of exciting.
Oh, I'm floating, actually.
Sure.
I'm kind of nowhere, because when we saw Yeshua on the bridge, it was like he was a huge magnet, and I was drawn straight from the bottom of the river into him. it was like I just zoomed into him. I didn't have to go on a path or any steps or anything. I just went, zooming straight into him. And then when you said Yahweh was standing in the door of that castle or whatever it was, I became that castle.
Oh, wow. Wow.
So I was in him and he was in me.
That's very awesome. That's very, very awesome.
Mm.
Wow. Wow. Thanks for sharing that. Thank you for sharing that. M.
Mute. Okay, sorry about that. I was wanting to know, have you ever experienced the Lambda or the Epsilon if during your meditation times?
Well, I don't think that I've experienced it to the extent of a suspended state that, well, that's not true. That's not true. Not to the extent where I can sit outside, in my high heel sneakers and not be cold, that kind of thing. But there's certainly times where I can be in the place where I lose complete track or awareness of reality that we perceive as ourselves and things around us, right? And absolutely. Is that the Lambda, Epsilon? Is it high or low? I can't tell you. I don't know. I find it interesting.
Okay.
There are those the frequencies that bring them in. I don't know what that suspended animation that the Tibetan monks experience, where they can sit for hours and hours without eating, drinking. Their bodies actually don't require any kind of attention. And that can happen for inordinate periods of time. They are in that state. So to that extreme, I have to say no, I haven't.
Well, the reason why I asked, because I for the first, well, I guess not the first time, but this past weekend, Saturday and Sunday, I did 2 different meditation, like for the blessing of the energy centers. One was for less than half an hour, the other one was for about 40 minutes. And I did them back to back. And it was because I had never really got to that point where I could actually experience the space around the energy center. And I started from the root and I went up. And the Saturday morning, I got interrupted. But anyways, that was a whole other trigger thing. But when I got to the point, I found it interesting when I got to the throat area. I sensed the first time on the Saturday when I did it that there was something more than just the energy center of the throat. It was near the back of the head, like at the back here. And then I went into the third eye, or some people call it the third eye, and I saw colors. It was a blue, and then it went to a violet, and then the crown. Now, when I was at the throat and the third eye, for some reason, and I was experiencing this, like how you've got that picture, it's like that, like the Merkaba, that visual, of the kind of 3-dimensional or whatever you want to call it. And I sensed, it was like my head was heavy. I couldn't comprehend what was going on, but it was it was almost like I was in a trance. I'd never experienced it before. And so, and it happened the same way the next day. At first I thought, well, am I being hypnotized? And I thought, no, that's not it. It had to do with the blessing of the energy centers, but it was the first time I'd actually really experienced the whole ability of visualizing, just like when you walked us through tonight's activation, the meditation and the intention. I actually was there, and I could actually be in that space around the energy centers. And so it was unique, but at the same time, it was almost like it was thick. I don't know how to, like, the only thing I can think of is it was a trance. I've never experienced it before. But I mean, it had me questioning. And of course, when you have a question, you go to the Father and you ask him. So I haven't got the complete revelation of it, but I just wanted to know if that was, I've never heard of this Lambda or this Epsilon. So is that all those frequencies? Is that kind of like in a circular type thing? Because you say the Lambda is 100 to 200 Hertz, whereas the Epsilon is less than 0.5.
Right, that's right. And they're entrained together, and that's how they are seen. So, and that is the level that like the Winhoff breathing techniques. They're very, I mean, they're at levels that and there's training for it, by the way. There's training, breathworks training that can be very, very helpful. And and you will know what is right for you. And I personally, when I learned what they were, and spent time in the training, it was very difficult. And I knew that if I would have to be dedicated, consciously dedicated to the process, and that it would take a lot of time. It's like learning anything, right? Every day it takes time and dedication. And I didn't feel at the time that I was able to do that. And the intensity of it was exciting, because the people in our class, they could hold their breath like 3-4 minutes in it. And sort of as the newbie coming in on it, and the intensity of the learning, I realized that would shift my body. Absolutely. So I understand on principle. I have not adopted it as a part of my protocols in this. I'm more gentle in my life, in my breathing, and in activatings, and that's why I continually come back to the heart-brain coherence. It is so gentle and so easy, just that consciousness of coming into your heart and breathing gently and allowing your body to move in that way. I don't want to hold anybody back, but that's just where I live in that. And I love taking the time to bless my energy centers and to allow the freedom as I learn to be in that place where I am nowhere, no one knows that. I just in him. And learning that, but all of that's very gentle for me. It seems very organic. So I can only share what I know.
Yeah, I understand totally, and I know what Yolande said. But when I do, I'm involved in ascension. That's what I am right there.
Yeah.
And that's when I feel all my senses are very, very affected. I mean, I feel, I see, the textures. I describe colors in a kind of more of a texture mode than anything else, because that's what God has shown me. But like when it came to this whole the blessing of the energy centers, it was I mean, you taught us this a while back, and I endeavored to do what, but I didn't comprehend. But for some reason, it happened on Saturday and Sunday, and it
Yeah.
it was gentle, even though that the whole and the ability of going into it and actually being in that space around each energy center and blessing it, and I it was awareness that was far beyond anything I've ever experienced. And yeah, it's quite something.
Isn't that beautiful? Thank you for sharing that. That's awesome. That's awesome. Susan, you were clapping and now your hand's up.
I meant to put my hand up, not to clap. I mean, I was clapping, I was with you encouraging him. But the question I have is, you were talking at the beginning and explaining the frequencies and how we have almost a conscious part in choosing the frequency that we're going to enter into some kind of activity. We can move from a beta to an alpha and then down and go up and down the ladder.
Yeah.
So my question is, if we're going to do a particular meditation, like the blessing of the energy centers, so what would, to me, it would be the best to choose to be the lowest frequency to get the kind of the broadest or deepest effect. But what if you just can't get out of beta, or you just can't get lower than alpha? Is that going to change the not effectiveness, but it'll change the experience of how you do that meditation? Explain that if you can.
Yeah.
If I ask that.
No, that's an excellent question. That's a really excellent question. The purpose for seeing the different levels, okay, is not that you're taking a gun and shooting for this level. It's the awareness within yourself that, for instance, if you're in a hyper space where your mind's racing and everything like that, your frequency is not low, right? It's if there's like, you're almost agitated, you're in a hyper mode, hyper vigilant mode. And so what we need to do to get to that 0.1 is actually the heart-brain coherence. That will bring you all the time. And that's a consciousness, a conscious awareness of how to get from the more active brainwave areas that carry different frequencies, right? At the higher ones, you learn differently, you process differently. You could be in a fight or flight, you can be, but then as you go into a more meditative state like heart brain, where you focus on your heart, where you use your consciousness to go into compassion and gratitude, you will feel yourself relax and going into that lower place, that gentler wave of the 0.1. And so all that chart is to give you information on how it works, and it's what you do with it that creates it. The easiest way for us to get into the meditative state and releasing it into any meditation is to set your heart into that place of coherence. And you automatically go into that 0.1 and you feel it, because you cannot feel that compassion and gratitude and love in a high frequency. You feel it, you sense it within you in the lower ones. I think I'm just the heart-brain coherence gal, you know?
Yeah. Can you do a refresher? I don't mean tonight, but I mean at some point another refresher on how to do the step by step for the heart-brain coherence.
Yeah, it's it's on the river 474. If you go to oh, Susan, I'll make a note and I'll send it to you.
Yep.
I'll send it to you.
Okay, because but you know, I know all the lessons, like I go back and, you know, redo them during the week, but I can't seem to remember to put my finger on.
I totally understand. I'll send it to you. And it's the one I just go back to because it's the one you can do whether you're in a dentist's office or in an airport. It's the one that tunes you in with your heart. It's I'm serious. I was having a medical procedure done, and I was asked if I wanted this anesthetic, if I wanted this pill for that, and I said no. I know how to rest. Don't worry. And they came back 3 or 4 times and say, wouldn't you like all this? I said, thank you. No, I'm good. And when they took my blood pressure and vitals and everything, within the 10 minutes, I was able to be in that 0.1 and not needing anything else. So we can deliberately, and that's why I push for a heart brain. It does everything that we need. All right, I'm going to send it to you. Thanks for asking. Okay, Yolande? Are you there?
Yeah. When, who was it? M was talking about, you know, the epsilon lambda going a circle round. It reminded me of the Hebraic. Everything is circular. And you go from the end to the beginning and beginning to the end. So if we are going on that path, lambda and epsilon, and doing that circular pattern, if you like,
Right.
We're going from the beginning to the end and end to the beginning. And seeing everything in the now, in the eternal now, in the same, at the same time. Right? Would you agree?
You know what, 100%. If I actually tried to create a graph, putting it into a circle, because when you do that, what you see is the lowest goes into the highest. It goes, and that's what the science has been able to measure, that those two, that the lambda is not a frenetic pace. It's a consistent high frequency, and the epsilon the opposite. But when they see it on the EEGs, one is actually fit into the other, and so it does form. It takes it all and forms that. So we do become in the now. We are one, and it would be worth further study. And I invite anybody to do that.
Yeah.
That's
and the other thing I wanted to, sorry, Helen, I didn't mean to speak over you.
No, it's good.
Okay. The other thing is, years ago, when I was battling chronic fatigue, and I started doing Ayurvedic, you know, modality, and they taught me how to do transcendental meditation. And how we started that was, I would massage my head from every day, from the top of my head to the tip of my toe, and using this special oil, and then going into the deep breathing and into meditation. Now, I would do that every single day, but sometimes I would do it twice, morning and night. And my whole physiology changed. It changed completely. But when they had me doing that coupled with yoga, and then when I was told what yoga was all about and where the root was and stuff, I stopped everything. And my whole physiology went back to square one.
Yeah, I understand. I understand. We are learning so much, right? We're learning so much. Have you gone back to any of those modalities?
Well, actually, as we were doing that today and you were leading us, the Lord took me back to the massage and going into the TM mode, because I used to go really, really high, and I used to be in that for hours.
Mhm.
I was there for hours, but
That's-
I didn't have any language at the time. I didn't know any of all of this. You didn't know about frequencies and vibrations and etc. etc. What we have language for now, but I didn't have anything then, so I had no grid for it.
Right. Well, I think that's, I think there's a real balance that we're being brought into. It's important to know that the hows and the whys between, you know, in what we're learning, and have an understanding. But the most important thing we do is to activate so that we can be totally led by him.
Yeah.
And we sometimes forget that. I think that's where when Kim was teaching last week on Elohim, and Gina said, you know, I love everything that she's learning, but her goal is to now activate it, to live it, to be it, not just to hear about it. And that doesn't put down any teaching. That just brings us into that place of reality that we can, you know, I think it's in Acts where it talks about the women that go house to house, ever learning, but never coming to the knowledge of truth. And the only way we're to, it doesn't say learning is wrong. It just said we have to come into the knowledge of truth, the knowing, the intimacy, and he is the way, the truth, the light.
Yeah. Well, when we went, you're going back to what we did last week, the Lord has been taking me back to that leaf that was on the vine. And now, as you're talking and we are discussing that, I'm seeing where that leaf, and all of the veins in the leaf is the tree that's inside of us.
Nice. Yeah, we are the tree of life. Exactly.
And that river is flowing in us.
Mhm, mhm, mhm. That's really good. That's really good. Thanks, Yolanda. That's awesome. Gigi.
That was beautiful. Thank you. I was just going to add something that I thought in all the comments and discourse that we've been having about it, is, you know, getting into the sort of logistics of the brainwaves sort of reminds me of my personal training and a study, because we had to know, you know, oh, here, when you do this and you raise your heart level at this rate, your RRH is this, and it has to be at this level in order to distribute ATP and blah, 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 blah. And it doesn't really matter, because the point of it all is that you're exercising and you're raising your heart rate, and you're doing that carefully, because, you know, you build all of that, right? So I think of it as the same way as this. You know, it's not so much that we need to understand the mechanics and the logistics of what sort of brainwave that we're in, but that we're exercising that neuroplasticity, and our brain waves automatically respond to the work that we're doing, like our breath and our heart rate automatically responds to the exercise that we are exerting in our bodies, because we're fearfully and wonderfully made, spirit, soul, and body. So in our brain and in our body, it's organic, and we just go ahead and do. We understand it because we've learned about it, and that's all the knowledge you actually need to get going. So I just kind of make the analogy with exercise and what your body's doing, what your heart is doing, what your blood vessels are doing. We don't care. We just go to the gym and do our deal.
Yeah.
Get into the whole, logistics of it. So same sort of thing. This is an exercise. This is a practice. This is a thing that we do and get good at only because we do it, not because we know more about it.
Well, I think those are really good points, and the key is in the doing, isn't it? But the other thing is, it's kind of nice to know. I'm always encouraged when I know that, for instance, when if we sat and did this into the river activation every day, our pathways in our brain start creating that river. And it's easier and easier and easier for us to be in the river than it is even walking down the street, because we've actually changed our brain function. And so, like you have to go to the gym and exercise. This is also a gym and exercise program that we're in that affects change, big change. Yeah, thanks, Gigi. Okay, Kathy. You've got the whole family there. Nice to see you.
It's Eric who has the question.
Hey, thanks. I didn't catch the teaching. I was intrigued when I heard you were going to be leading an activation, and I was down here at the foot of where Kathy's feet are. Smell nice, don't worry. I just wanted to say that I came in a place that was very agitated tonight, and I just really was able to follow the activation and just meet with the Lord, and it's really affected my heart. And when you said we need to move on, I kind of lingered at the bench a little longer, and then when we had to come back, I actually ran back to the bench and stayed there until just a few minutes ago, and I kind of zoomed out into outer space. I'm not sure where I'm now, but it just thoroughly blessed my heart, and I picked up a really bright blue gem, so I'm looking forward to what that is. And I just wanted to thank you for leading it, and I know I can't often be there because of my mental situation, my mental health crisis that I'm still in, but I really appreciated it tonight, leading it. Thank you very much. And now I need to go just do a Formula One qualifying with my son. He's waiting.
Eric, thank you. Such a blessing. Thank you. Jackie, and then Sharina.
I basically have sort of one word floating around all evening as I hear people sharing, and that word is harmony.
Oh.
And it's like the frequencies coming into harmony with one another. The frequencies, I'll just leave it at that.
That's lovely.
Harmony.
That's lovely. That's probably what Mike Parsons is trying to teach. I'm gonna have to find that one. That's awesome, Jack.
I was wondering, yeah.
Yeah. Sharina.
Yeah, so it was so beautiful for me. I'm still in there. I haven't come back yet. My brain has like sort of a thing when there, it's like, but what happened when we stepped it, I become a small girl, always like a little girl wearing a yellow dress. and I was playing around with the Yeshua. I was like running around and here and there in the water, and there was butterflies, and and in between I dozed off. I just dozed, but after 2 times but I didn't disconnect. I don't know why. It was like it was still when I could hear your voice, it just connected, and it just tossed up. But it was, that was my experience. It was like so good, very good, and I'm still it's like my head become light. There's nothing there now. It's a light, light in the sense, not the light. It's very lightheaded, not. So, it's what I feel, and in a different mindset. Just wanted to be like that forever. Don't know. Yeah, it's so peaceful and nice. Thank you, Helen. Yeah.
That's a blessing. That's a blessing. Well, you don't have to come back, you can go back, and like Father said tonight, you can come back anytime. Just
I wish there's no jobs, nothing. Can just stay there and do.
stay there.
No.
Stay there. That's perfect. Thank you, Kathy.
Yeah, this other, when Mike was teaching on the same video, he talked about living in health. And we talked about the frequencies, the bowls, which made me think of Gigi, of course, because I know she's practiced with them. But he was just saying how he uses them for intentions, and he'll actually, the frequency of the bowls will often intensify the intentions. So I know that they resonate at different frequencies. How do the frequencies of those bowls interact with our brain frequencies? Like, because I know that they're quite high, the frequencies that, well, that's what I understood anyways, so how do they interact with our brainwaves?
Well, okay. Here's a couple of things that happen with, and maybe Gina wants to share too. Were you here when the last time that Mike's been here a couple of times when we went out to the lodge? No. We had just the one bowl in, I think it was C, that Gina brought, and it was really interesting. I had a really good talk with Mike about that, because he was just being at that time introduced to the bowls and the crystal bowls and that himself. And I said, I felt like when you were talking to Mike, when you were playing the bowl, he was quite adept at it. And I said, I felt like you could play the bowl and another person could do it equally. But when you did it, I felt the intention behind it coming from you, where I haven't heard it the same way. So there's something that happens when the frequency of the person, because he's a frequency, right? Whoever's playing the bowl is a frequency. As a matter of fact, Gina did an amazing, we were celebrating her daughter, Gina's daughter, when she was pregnant, and we had this prayer meeting for her one afternoon. It was just a few weeks ago before the baby was born. And Gina was asked to give the mother's blessing to her daughter. And she had the bowls. And when she did that, because of the intention of the mother's heart, Gina's frequency was released by the bowl as she played it. It was a tangible evidence of it happening in the room, like we're undone, right? And she went through different parts of the blessing. But it wasn't as much, if she played the bowl just by itself, it would have been beautiful. But because there was an intention behind it, the frequency of her intention was carried on the wavelength of the frequency of the bowls and went out into the room, and we were wrecked. Like, so that's how I see that working. They're two separate frequencies. The bowl is a frequency, and it plays at certain levels, hertz, as you play them, A, B, C, D, like on a piano. But we have that frequency as well. And those frequencies are positive and negative. So when you send out the frequency of blessing in alignment with someone who can, play the instrument, whether it's a bowl or a piano, like we experienced that with and in other instruments as well, that frequency is carried on or with that instrument. So I don't know if that answered your question, or if
I guess it was understanding how, like, the frequency of love, let's say, interacts with, if we're in that lower frequency, whatever, whether it's beta or whatever, like if there is actually an interaction between, because one is so low and one is so high.
I see. Gina,
Gina.
Over to you.
I was just gonna say that you have a beautiful choir, let's say, and they're all, there's 4 parts or 5 parts, and there's a bunch of people singing, and so there's a bunch of different frequencies right there, and together they make this beautiful sound. If just one part sang, it would still make a beautiful sound. But I think that when there's a bunch of different frequencies together, that's part of, and Kim talked about worship, and I don't mean worship like we, that we're maybe used to, like a worship service, but the frequency of sound is on a completely different level than what we understand. The frequency of sound in the spirit produces a thing. So I think you can have a bunch of different frequencies going together to make a symphony or cacophony of frequency sound to reach different people at different levels in different places. Also, I was going to say that when you're delivering a song, let's say, singing or being in the theater, or you're doing something and somebody's watching, maybe not so much the theater, but let's say singing a song, and you're delivering a thing, or a pastor or somebody is delivering a message. The frequency of the words, the frequency of the song is going forth, but not just in and of itself, because it's coming from a heart, right? Going from me singing or a person speaking. And I think that people get moved by a song or moved by a message, not so much by the words necessarily, but they are frequency and they do go forth, but from the intention, how they're delivering it, from the spirit that they are delivering those words, the spirit that they are delivering that song. People might say to me sometime, oh, that was really moved me. That song really moved me. And I thought, well, then if it's the song only, then it should move everybody. But it doesn't, right? So, but if it's some particular thing, it's because of the thing the gift that I was giving through the thing, and that ministered to their heart, that touched their heart, that moved them, and that in it resonated here and here and made a difference and affected change in that. So that's how I understand it.
Yeah, I think that's good. Kathy, did that help?
I appreciated what Gigi was sharing, because I do see that, and I have seen that, I've experienced that. So I like appreciate how you put that into words. I think maybe I just need to do some research on my own, just understanding how our actual brain waves are affected by different frequencies, just that reception, because there are, there's radio waves, there's everything flying around in this room right now, but we're not picking up on it all, right? So just that, why is it that sometimes that frequency of that song, besides the intention of the person, delivering it, but if that receptivity, perhaps it has the brain waves that um, we're replacing ourselves in receiving from that person as well, because you can be in a place where you're closed-minded about the person talking, you have an offense towards them or whatever, and you won't be able to receive anything they're saying, that the effect that brainwave will even have on in that kind of a situation.
That's right. That's right. And that's why it's so important, 100%. That's why it's so important that our inner thoughts, our inner conversation matches our outer being. We can't stand there and say, you're a really pukey human being, and hug them and expect them to feel loved, right? Our inner conversation has to be, gee, I'm so glad you're here. I love you. And that's when the frequencies match. And it's also that fun experiment that I was saying about that, you identify a type of people, like the highly discriminating people. They didn't go around, they didn't know that they were in an experiment. They just carried a frequency that matched other frequencies. And because they were repelled by other people, not in a bad way, it's just that they didn't match, because of their nature, they found each other purely by frequency, by who they all were. And so out of the 200, the 10 find each other. And I think it's interesting anyway, how we really are wonderfully and fearfully made. All right, well, this has been fun. I hope everyone's okay with everything. Did we miss anybody? All right. Okay, well, thank you for joining us tonight. And Judy, it was so nice to almost see you. I know that you're there, and I love you very much. Thanks for coming. And I just want to say bless you. And may the Lord bless you and keep you. May he make his face to shine upon you and be gracious unto you. May he lift up his countenance upon you and grant you his shalom, his peace. Love you, love you, love you. And we'll see you next week.